Hey guys, welcome to the 2022 GrindingStone Hard Enduro race in Page, Arizona. That was the pro start, and now we're bumping up to the first row. They're setting us back really close to this big sand hill. It actually looks pretty small here in the video, but it's pretty steep. So you can see there's just, oh my gosh, there's just carnage right from the get-go. So I skipped a bunch of that, the GoPro was off, but this is when you make it up the first gnarly hill climb and you get into the top of this mesa. So they're starting you off with some pretty rough terrain, kind of side hilling through these toilet bowls. And the A class is all pretty tight here. I think I was number 4 out of the start. But we're catching up to the pro guys up here, I think, and that's the guy that was right next to me at the beginning of the start, and he was like a pro, like dirt tracker or something. So I walked this downhill in the beginning before the race, and it was actually a lot sketchier looking walking it than riding it. When you got on and you just rode it, it just flowed, which is pretty nice, because I thought it was going to be a little bit sketchier when we were walking it the night before. You can walk the course and see the lines, but you know, the course this is a 14-mile course, so you can't really walk all of it. I'm definitely not hiking strength enough to do all that in right before a race either. This is a pretty cool section. You come up and you swoop around this thing, like do a little side hill, and then there's a little ledge at the top. It flows together nicely. So I saw this line, and that guy just gunned it a little too hard, and that cut me off. I wasn't able to keep my momentum. I was going to go higher into it, but it just didn't work out, and now I'm just stuck in this bottleneck. Had to go through these bushes, and I'm just getting stuck. It kind of killed my motor right there, and I'm pretty sure that bush got stuck in the sprocket or something, and the bike wasn't strong enough to pull it out. But all these guys are getting past me right now because I'm just trying to get the bike moving. It's pretty frustrating, to be honest. So coming up to the next little section, I saw that there's a right line where I could just drop into this thing and go, and I actually wasn't going to do it right there, but my bike was just rolling, so I was like, alright, screw it, I'm going to send it. And that guy kind of fell over, and I was able to squeeze through there. I got pretty lucky right there, I think. So we're side-hailing through these mesas. A little pivot turn. There wasn't a lot of pivot turns in this race, actually, but there's a couple, so I got to use those skills. I was practicing those a lot before the race. I feel like it's a good little exercise to get the back warmed up for these races where you're pulling so much. Oh, I like this line. I actually knew it ahead of time. You do a big rainbow and then you shoot up this thing with the ledge. I rode in Page like a month before this. We didn't know what the course was, but we rode some sections. But we did go through this, so I kind of knew what was coming. It was sketchy the first time I did it, but you know, since I'd done it, I knew it rolled, and I was able to just go for it, which is nice. And then just pushing through this super deep sand. There's a lot of big walls that you just have to hit and pray that you're gonna get traction, but so it's starting to get a little bit rougher, a little less slabby here. This pretty cool chunky section where you had to blip your front wheel up, scoot it over. This shroud would have hit on that rock before, so you couldn't just hit it straight. I really like technical little pieces like that where you have to move the front wheel over precisely and get it. So me and my girlfriend rode this the day after the race, and that thing was quite a bit harder. I'm glad I got up that smooth. You had to like float over the left and then slide down and then launch into the kind of soft stuff. It went pretty well for me this first time, so I'm happy about that. There's definitely a lot of sketchy downhills where you just dropped in and just hope for the best. Just pretty much just let Jesus take the wheel. You can see everyone turning around right here. We've got a big hill climb. Got a line up for it. Really deep sand with a bunch of chunky rocks. Just barely got up onto that slab. Had to get off the bike and push it the rest, I think. And then pivot it around. It's just like one gnarly thing after the next at this race. It's like the best. It's definitely my favorite race that I've ridden, just because it's just so gnarly. And this line is my first big mistake of the race. So you can see everyone's piled up. Those are all pros up there, and I'm just following this guy because I see he's got a good line. I'm gonna go for it. That guy shoots out in front of me, sketches me out. I would have kept going basically to where he was going. That was the line I was sending, but because he scared me, I had to slide down into this bottleneck behind Joe Nemeth right here. This is his first pro race. He was top 3 of the A's last year. So I'm in the A class. This is my first A race, if I didn't mention it before. Last year I won the B class in the B championship, so now I'm bumped up to A, and it's kind of it's a lot harder, it's a lot faster, you know, so still getting the hang of it. This is my first race in it. And this section basically just seemed impossible. Like, man, this is a really tough section. You can just see everyone's struggling right here. I'm just giving it all I can to push the bike up. You can see Joe right there just slid down the thing, trying a different line. It's just so steep, you can't hit it with no momentum.
Where are they all going?
And right there, I just noticed, I was like, where are all those guys going? Are they cutting the course? They're going around, and they went past the ribbon, and they went farther, and then hooked up the hill. And basically what I found out, second lap, I went around and I started going up this and struggled up it. And what I found out is that this actually wasn't a part of the amateur loop. This is the pro line. They had like 5 or 6 pro only lines, and this thing was, I did not see it marked at all as a pro line, so it's really frustrating. There's no one down there pointing us like amateurs one way, pro another, which they do later in the race. So it's pretty frustrating to spend all this time pulling bikes up this thing, tons of energy. You can see Joe helped me out pulling my bike up. So I went back and helped Joe to get his bike up. But man, it's super frustrating that I had to do this, that I spend the time and energy to do this section. But see, now I'm up. You can see over on the right, that's where all the that's the amateur line. It was still hard, don't get me wrong, but it was definitely not as hard as, pretty much impossible for my level to hit that pro line. By myself. I had to have assistance. So, getting back to the slabs, allowing me to catch your breath a little bit. That would have been a really cool line if I could have like wheelied through that section, but instead I had to get up there and static zap it. So we're getting up to the top of the mesa now, and then you just kind of follow along the top for a little while, catch your breath, and then this is the drop in. I totally screwed myself there. I got so wedged when I gassed it right here, and I just had to pull the bike up and rev it. And I'm just so glad that Metis hooked up and was able to pull the bike up. Everyone's walking their bike right here. Super steep, way steeper than it looks on camera. You can see I'm just sliding down this thing on the side of my bike. I was able to get on it here, but it was pretty sketchy. Like the back tire just wanted to fall up. There's Justin. He's the guy that puts on the King of the Hammers race. Well, not this year, but all the previous years. And he rides for TM, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool company. I'd like to try one of those bikes sometime. So we were hanging kind of this whole top section, probably this whole mesa. We were hanging together, and just kind of helping each other out and following each other. So it's pretty fun to ride with him. I've never ridden outside of the race with him, but I always see him at the races, so it's pretty cool. Pretty sketchy, going a little sideways there. And the sand of this place is so deep. It's pure sand, and then it's pure rock, complete opposites. And so you're just pinning it, and then you finally get traction, and then just like too much traction. It's a really interesting place to ride because there's no traction, and then there's pure traction, and then and then it goes back and forth between the two a bunch. So you have to side hill through this. I was running a new Mitas front tire that I haven't ridden, the C19, and I got in the yellow stripe, which is a little bit harder compound. I've been running the green stripes lately, which are soft, but I was really surprised at how well this yellow stripe, kind of medium hardness tire, was hooking up on this. Like, it was sticking so well to the sides of these hills. So I'm really impressed. I think I'm gonna keep running these kind of medium hard tires on the front. So this climb took me like 3 tries because it goes sand, and then there's a huge bump at the bottom you can see right here, and you had to like de-weight the bike really well, use those trial skills to let the bike not pop up and hold traction. But it took me a couple tries, and that's a lot of energy to redo those things and go and turn around in the sand. Trying to sneak around here. There's a lot of lines. I like that this course was nice and wide, and you could find different lines. You didn't have to just take what everyone else was taking, so you could make some passes. And I don't think I passed too many people. Everyone's going so fast in this class, so I was just kind of moving along at my own pace, really. But it was just nice. After that first section, I'm not really in any bottlenecks. You come to... You would come to sections like this where you kind of wait in line to hit something, but honestly you're just so tired, it's just nice to catch your breath. I think these really loose sections were the hardest for me. Maybe other people, if you guys do this race, like, did you think this was hard, or do you think the big slabs that you just had to send it on were like harder because they're scarier?
I was not ready for this heat. It's hot, man.
He just said he wasn't ready for this heat. Totally understand that. It was 80 in the 80s for this race. Pretty brutal racing in these hot conditions, but I guess I'm kind of used to it riding in California. It gets pretty hot there in the summers, so I wasn't dying too bad. I was in the climb gear, which is super ventilated on the chest and the legs for how durable it is. So I was really happy with that I wasn't overheating too bad. But at some point my bike does start to overheat. I think it's not till the second lap, and the battery starts dying, and I end up having to use a kickstart, which is, I'm glad I had the kickstart. And I don't think I mentioned, but this is actually my 2018 KTM. It was the 250XC that I revved for a little while, and then I converted it to a 300XC.
Good?
Yeah, I got you.
That way?
No.
Oh, thank you. I don't want to, no.
So I got the bike running really good after I finally put the Electron on it. It ran terrible with the Mikuni. I got the Electron from B-Rad, And then I was having a problem with the sticky cable, and it wasn't the cable, it was actually the slide was wearing, and I had like an old version of the slide, so I got like a fresh new one from him, and I just fixed it. The bike just works so good. The throttle is so snappy. I love how these carbureted bikes are just really easy to ride. They feel a lot lighter than my TPI, and it's just really fun to ride. So I raced that bike, and I'm really happy with how it rode. You know, I did say I killed my battery, but I'm glad I had the kickstart. Basically, I was just a little bit too lean on this bike. I was going back and forth right before the race trying to get it dialed. I was going between like slightly rich and slightly lean. Kind of just, you turn the metering rod back and forth. It's really easy to adjust, but you do have to like take the seat off and pull the carb out. But I opted for like a little bit leaner so I could have a little bit of snap and blip to the bike when I got up, you know, at the top of like a big hill climb. You could snap that throttle and get over ledges. And I think I should have went a little bit richer, just because that would keep the bike a little bit cooler, I think. But overall, the bike performs so well. I just love the feel of this thing. So it really makes me consider my next bike being a carbureted bike. I was looking at like the Shercos and the Reijus, like they both have the key and carbs on it. They both have KYB suspension, so I'd be really curious to test those out and see how they work. So I think I might go try one of those. Let me know what bike you think I should get. And we're starting to make dumb mistakes here, unfortunately. So this guy just said you can either go right or you can go back and do a switchback right here. And I figured, hey, I'll take the right line, it'll be easier, right? Not even close. Man, that was a tough climb. I'm pretty sure I posted this on Instagram, and James Flynn said he made it up that no problem every time. He's in the pro class, so he's a lot better than me, obviously. So when I try these pro lines, it's really humbling to know that, like, hey, I still got a lot to work on, because like I can't make these different lines. The amateur course I felt pretty good on the whole time. There's only a few things that I thought I couldn't quite make. So I mean, this was a little bit scary right here. You've got this huge cliff edge.
Go that way.
So that's Tristan Hart kind of yelling at me to get out of the way and move over. He's lapping me already. I'm on my first lap. He's on his second right here. And man, usually you get lapped by these guys, and then pretty shortly after there's another racer to come lap you. But man, second place, third place, I think like Cooper Abbott, like they were way behind Tristan Hart. Like I can't believe how much of a lead Tristan had. You know, I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but if you haven't seen already, Tristan Hart won the race, and I think he was like 40 minutes ahead of everyone else, like all the other pros, which is insane. You know, Cody Webb was hurt for this race, so that was kind of a bummer. I think he broke his wrist right at Enduro Cross in Europe. So usually he's battling with Tristan, but yeah, so he was out, and fortunately, so. And sometimes you gotta check the bike. So I'm basically just trying to lift the bike up and just not let it slide down. That's the last thing I want to do, is chuck my bike up this thing again. You can see it's like kind of right on the edge there, starting to slide on the rear, but I got to figure out how to pop it. So I'm just giving it really light throttle Just trying to do a really light pivot and not let that rear wheel spin. You could just hear it lugging with the clutch. Lots of heavy breathing. Trying to find a line. I think I can just sneak by here and switch back up the side of it, but definitely getting tired here. And I'm about to get to a really gnarly downhill that you had to walk your bike, or I teamed up with someone each time. Just one guy on the front brake, one guy holding the back tire down. But I actually didn't end up filming it. I thought it was on, but it wasn't, unfortunately. That was a pretty crazy downhill. I saw a lot of pros just tossing their bike down this section, and until I think the second lap, the rocks shifted a little bit and they were able to squeeze by on the right. You can see I just pulled that T-handle out of my Trailbound pad pack. Comes in really handy for quick fixes. Don't have to take the backpack off or anything. So always stoked to have a little bit of tools in that pad pack and just keep the bike running and, you know, not running it all janky. I think I adjusted my clutch lever once or twice too and tightened the handguards down. Broke a handguard bolt that fell out or stripped out or something, so I had to keep tightening the top one to keep it from spinning too much. Some of these walls just seem like they're never ending. They just kept going and going. But you did get a lot of traction on that stuff. If you could keep moving, you could just keep motoring up the thing. But here I just ran out of talent, ran out of speed, and got to kind of switch back up this thing and get by. I think that was Cooper Abbott on the Sherco there. He ended up being third place. So you can see, I think he just first lapped me just there. That's how big of a gap it was between him and Tristan Hart. Pretty cool to get to ride some slot canyons. You know, it's kind of quintessential Arizona type terrain, so they just threw that in there for fun. Nothing too hard in there, but it's pretty cool that they just sent you in there. Got a little scenic, a little inspiration to keep shredding it. So this section, I think this was Stairway to Heaven or something, and I didn't know if we had to do this one or not. I was just kind of looking around. I saw some tape on the left. Again, that was a pro line to the right, and the guy in front of me, he tried it, and then someone came running and being like, hey, no, go the other way, that's a pro line. So I'm on the amateur line now. It's pretty frustrating that the course that wasn't marked there, because the course has been very well marked. Like, it's really easy to follow all the tape, but there's definitely the pro and amateur splits were just not marked well enough. They were pro only lines. Amateurs were not supposed to go on those, and you know, because they're really hard. But yeah, I hope next year they can have like a sign in a different color for pro, and one that says pro, one that says amateur, because definitely kind of that was the one bad part about the course, is not quite understanding what was a pro line and what was an amateur line. This is pretty cool, little side hill. Again, those Midas gummies and that yellow front just sticking to this thing like sandpaper. Really happy with the traction, because this is definitely sketchy. It feels like you're going to slide off, or feels like if you slid, you would just slide, and then go down the drop. But these tires were sticking really well, and I'm really happy with how they're feeling. These bumps are like pure washboards. You can just imagine how rough riding this stuff on the body is. For I think I ended up doing 4.5 hours. I think they would cut you off at 5.5 hours, so you got to really be able to hold on for a long time. This is probably the longest race that we have of the series, and it's pretty cool that they make it long, because you drive so far. If it's just like a 2.5 hour or 3 hour race, and it's like, I like when they have a couple races, like maybe like a prologue or something to get warmed up on. But this is cool that it was nice and long, and just tons and tons of amazing rocks to ride. This is the last mesa, finally made it. I think there's like 4 different mesas or something. And this is the last one that we did end up walking the night before, just because it was closest to camp. And a lot of this stuff looked really sketchy when you're walking it. Like this part, you're side hilling, and then you slide into this like rock crevice thing. It rolled so much better when you're on the bike. So it's just one of those things, like you kind of gotta trust the bike. Right here I'm just asking what's the better line, because sometimes the crowd knows. That the guy in front of me went farther left, but I saw that it was kind of burned in on the right, so I figured I'd ask, and it did go up pretty easy until he got up to here, and then it's just loose tire spinning type of terrain. Cool side hill line that goes into a shale thing. I think there's actually a line to the left, made a little bit easier, so I just backed up there and was able to kind of keep moving while he was choosing his line. So it's cool that there's different options that you can see. You can decide what line you want to take. One might be gnarlier, one might be faster, one might screw you, but it's just kind of nice to keep moving and not just be stuck in a bottleneck like a lot of the other races where they're just too narrow.
Far left.
So you just had to go all the way up that thing. You can just see the line. It's like kind of sideways, pretty sketchy, but it just kept going and going. This is like the type of terrain you dream about, just rocks and features everywhere. So cool that they have a race here. And they just go up and down the mesa, and they just keep taking you up and down all these lines. They had it taped off super well. This one seemed like maybe the scariest looking at it, but it did go pretty well. The second lap was super shadowy and it was even sketchier. It gets kind of sketch up here when you have to hit all this stuff kind of sideways, like side hilling, and then hitting some different ledges like that guy. Unfortunately, I just didn't have the skill to pay the bills on that one, so I'm gonna just pivot around. I was gonna turn around here, but then I saw there was a little side cut, so I just pivoted, did little tiny pivots so I didn't launch my bike off the side of this hill. I was able to jump on and just creep through this. When you're doing side hills like that are really sketchy, it's better to not have the gas on and just kind of just almost push through it, or just lightly give it little blips, because you don't want to slide that back tire out and just lose all your traction.
Fuck, that was dangerous. Oh my god.
Yeah, that one scared me. It didn't look bad on camera, but oh man, that was sketchy. You're going fast up that thing. There's a lot of high consequences thing. This is the last gnarly thing. It's this toilet bowl drop in, and it looked so scary when we were walking it. But I mean, really, it went down pretty easy. You just had to have the balls to try it, I guess. I wonder if next year they're gonna make us go up that, because that would be very scary. There's my girlfriend on the left. She getting videos along the way. It's awesome to see her out on the course. And this is just the last side hill down. You bomb through the sand. So yeah, that's the end of the race. This is lap 1. I ended up hitting 2 laps. It said I was in 12th right there. By the end of the day, I think I came in 11th in A out of 40 people, and then overall I ended up 30th out of the 207 people riding the race. So thanks for checking out the video. If you guys have any questions, leave them down below. If you like this video, share it to your buddies, and I'll keep making more of them. Thanks guys, I'll see you out on the trail.